Hi, and we are back for another episode of You're in Charge Now What, the podcast where we have some conversations together to help spark change in you, to help you become the leader that you want to be. Our goal is to help new managers become better leaders, and each week we are here to give you tactical tips. And today I'm very excited because I get to interview one of my team members, someone who I am so proud of their journey and what they've done for our company, PCG Digital, Sarah Ciociola, who heads up our paid media team. Welcome. How are you?
Thanks for having me. My first time.
Yeah, it's very and it's great because I usually am doing something on Zoom and we have somebody here, but because we're local New Jerseyites, we get to be here in person. So I want to dive in and I want you to be as tactical as you see fit to answer questions, but the term social media marketing, I should say. Social media has evolved and everybody has it. They can't get away from it. It has this weird addictive quality to it. But from a business standpoint, as an agency and from a marketing standpoint, there still is confusion because when we have clients coming to us or we talk about this, I think they don't understand what it is. There's confusion about how the platforms work, what they should do, what their strategy. Why do I have to spend this amount? So before we dive in and get tactical with everyone, this is a baseline. Why do you think there is this confusion, or am I wrong that there is a confusion?
I think the biggest confusion with social media marketing, and whether it's in automotive or not, and this is just digital marketing, I think in general, is that a lot of business owners just expect results right away. They just want it to contribute to their bottom line every 30 days, whether it's through leads, phone calls, chats, texts, any kind of conversation with the business. But social media is a very long-term game. It's a very fluid game. You want to think of it almost a little bit more similar to SEO than you are to paid search on the Google or the Microsoft side. So social media is branding, it's traffic, it's not necessarily contributing to your bottom dollar every month, but it's contributing to those conversions in other places.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up, is they're not seeing the results right away, so they're thinking it's not working. So
do you think that's because one, when digital marketing came out, it promised that you could see results and you could, every dollar that you spent, you could somehow attribute to something. But what I'm hearing also is social media marketing is almost the digital equivalent of traditional marketing, if that makes sense, meaning people would invest in a billboard.
Right.
And you couldn't tell me how that worked, or you took an ad in the newspaper, and unless somebody came in with the newspaper, you trusted that if I was there all of the time, when someone needed my services, they would remember because they saw the billboard, they saw the commercial, they saw the newspaper, but it wasn't held to the same accountability that, say, digital is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think with social media, just in general, younger, whether it's marketing managers or, dealer principals or business owners, understand the importance of social media marketing a little bit more because they understand how it's used all day, every day. Like, people are on it all day long. It's just a part of their life every single day. Where people who are a little bit older, they didn't grow up with social media. So they're not understanding the impact that it has on a day-to-day basis. And that could be paid, that can be organically. But again, I think business owners are still just looking for that bottom dollar. How is it, contributing to my bottom line? Whereas younger people understand it's a lifestyle, it's a branding tactic, and you have to be in front of them all the time because your consumers are on it all of the time, whether they're purchasing from you or not.
No, but that makes sense because, I am part of the gray-haired set and prior to all of this. But
I'm starting to be too. So.
No, way too young for that. But if you think about it, television was where, let's say your commercials were, but you relied on me being on the couch at a certain time and you picked the most popular program because that's where the eyeballs were. Now everyone has the equivalent of that television in their pocket at all times, and I can watch it all of the time. And I think, to your point, the misunderstanding is if you don't really get the fact that somebody could be watching something all the time and you need to be there all the time or at a high rate for it to cut through the noise of everyone else doing this and attention spans have gone down. I think that's a really good point. So how do you overcome that question, so to speak, of, well, how is this working and where are my, impact on my business? How does that conversation go?
Yeah. So the first thing I say for auto dealers specifically, because those are the people I'm talking to all day long, is that there's an average, and this is just going to increase and increase, but there's an average of 26 digital touch points that somebody's going to make with the dealership online before they even make a conversion with you, before they chat you, text you, call you. Forget about even going physically into the dealership.
Right.
So where are you during those 26 digital touch points? Nobody sees an ad on the 1st of the month and buys a car on the 30th of the month.
Right.
So the 30-day attribution window that dealers love so much is just not realistic. So that's the first thing I say. And then the second thing I like to say to dealers when we're developing a social media strategy is like, look, would you interact with this? Would you click on it?
Right.
If you were going through your feed really, really quick, and we know how quick we go, would you stop and click on this and read the ad copy? And chances are you probably wouldn't, because it's so sales centric and it's not fun. It's not following a trend. It's not engaging. But they're just looking for anybody to click on it and anybody to convert with them. But you have to start at the very basic level of, would you interact with it? And if you're not going to interact with it, chances are your customers aren't either.
And I think that's a very good point, because early on, and you still hear it sometimes, well, I'm not on XYZ. Let's call Facebook. Yeah. I'm not on Facebook. So what does it matter? And well, it's not about you. It's about your customers. And where are your eyeballs? And to your point, every platform has a little different strategy. You can't just take what you did in traditional and put it on these platforms and go, it's going to work. And I think what I like about that, the point you made, is trying to get them to understand from their human side. Like, what do you do? Like, put this aside for a moment. Are you on it? Yes, I am. How do you use it? Well, I use it this way. Okay. Do you see ads? Yes. Well, what makes you stop? What doesn't makes you do? And once they understand that, oh, that's why I stop, or that's the goal, is to get something out there in that manner where somebody will stop and start to view it. I think that's a really good point. So, okay. So let's move this along. A business comes to you, could be automotive, could be non-automotive, and someone says, okay, I need social media marketing to grow my business. How do you start the conversation? Is there a checklist? Is there something that you need to understand from them to devise the strategy? And if so, what is it?
Yeah. So the first thing that I always ask them is, who's creating your content? So who's taking the pictures? Who's taking the videos? Are you posting organically? What are you currently present on? What do you need to be present on? And who's your market? Because each market for each business is going to want to be present on different platforms, depending on the age and the gender and the location in the country and all of that good stuff. So that's the very first thing, is, do you have a content creator? Do you have somebody shooting those videos or taking those pictures? And are you able to send them to us on a daily or weekly basis so we can utilize them?
Right.
The second thing is, are you present organically? You can't run paid ads if you're not present organically. You have to develop that relationship long before you're running paid ads, right? Because you want to present that digital handshake to somebody without having to put any money into it. And that takes a long time. Like I said before, this isn't a 30-day and okay, we're all set and ready to go. This is continuous every single day, multiple times a day, engaging with people back if they're engaging with you, that kind of thing. And then once they're all set organically and they're creating that content, then I say, okay, let's create a paid strategy on social, whether that be on the Meta platforms, TikTok, that kind of thing. So we in automotive have been married to a digital sales funnel, right? Everybody loves the funnel. It's like, that's just what they live and die by. But this summer, actually, PCG is working on kind of rewriting that script a little bit to make it more lifecycle marketing. So about a year ago, I heard somebody speak at the Modern Retailing Conference, actually, about lifecycle marketing and how when you're just focused on the funnel, you're missing the retention and the loyalty strategies.
Yes.
And that's very much what we're missing in automotive, but I could bet my money that we're missing it in other businesses too.
Sure.
So making sure that when you're strategizing, you have a branding strategy, a strategy that's going to drive traffic to your website, a strategy that's going to encourage people to engage with you in a way that they can create conversations with you, a strategy where you're retaining those customers, they're loyal to you. They're giving you reviews. You're responding to them. They're now your word of mouth advertising. And then you're bringing all of that data back and you're doing it again and again and again. It doesn't stop. Somebody doesn't convert with you and then you kick them to the curb. You have to continuously be engaging with them. And that's what lifecycle marketing is. So that's something that we're also developing that I like to share with clients when they come on with us for social.
No, and I've written about this idea of the funnel. I don't like that word because a funnel implies everything goes through, and it doesn't. It's more, I was saying, a series of sieves or stages. And there's a sales, there's a marketing, there's a sales, there's a retention, and they all fit the same thing. But people get stuck at certain levels because of either their desire to move forward or, and which I like what you were saying is, I can get them to the website, but if the website doesn't continue that conversation, it's not connected, right? We wrote a book, myself and two other authors a few years ago called Connected Marketing. And that would be whatever they see out in the digital space or, you know, in the traditional space. If they come to your website, they should see that same image and branding and messaging. And then when they come to your, if you have a physical location where they're coming to, it should be the same thing. And there's all of these disconnects. And I think the websites sometimes are obstacles because they put up barriers to frustrate that, or we just don't have answers to their questions in a weird way because I think everyone's still hooked on that. Well, I need to get them to call me to get the information or fill out a form to call me versus trusting if I give you the information, that's actually moving me closer to you.
Yes.
Versus pushing me away because I feel, and you're younger than I am, but if you don't get the information, you're frustrated with that company and you move on to another company who's going to get you the information. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, 100%. And the other thing I like to educate our clients on too is generational marketing. So just thinking about who your consumer is and how they want to interact with you or with any business in general. Younger people do not want to call you. They don't want to get a million emails. Like, I'm serious, but like they'll text you back really quick or they'll message you back on
my
Facebook
son in the house
really quick.
I'm calling him, like physically calling him, and they're text me. I said, call your friend. The other day, it was funny. I said, just call your friend and see if they want to come over for dinner. He goes, I'll text him. I said, call them. He looked at me as if I was speaking a foreign language. He goes, we don't call.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. And they don't like talking on the phone. And so you're right. I like that idea of generational, but that goes back to this idea of having someone or understanding that, because that takes work.
Yeah.
That takes work to say, well, I'm going to design, I have a message, so to speak, whatever my message is, but I'm going to design it for Glenn, who's older. I'm going to this message for families or this age. And then, well, we have the younger group and we have to design the message or maybe put it on a different platform. That takes work.
Yeah.
And how is that communicated to a client who's going to say to you, I don't have time to do all of that?
Yeah. So that's what I would consider the future of digital marketing, right? Is generational marketing. Because when I started on our social media team in 2018, we would create just one strategy for a client on social. We would create their branding strategy, their traffic strategy, and a conversion-based strategy. Now you have to create strategies for different groups of people. So if you have a branding campaign running, you better have 5 or 6 ads in that branding campaign targeting different age brackets with different messaging and different videos or different graphics that are going to resonate with that person. You can't just throw spaghetti at the wall and like see if it sticks and see if
someone wants to see someone who looks like themselves or
and
the
who's solving a problem.
Right.
You know, a 25-year-old could buy a Honda Pilot, but if they're single with no kids and then the 35-year-old is also looking at the Honda Pilot, but they're looking for it because they have 3 kids and they need room in the back, but the 25-year-old's looking for the really cool sound system or whatever, you have to solve their problems. You have to sell them on what they're looking for. So that kind of thing.
So going back to your first point about having someone create content, one of the things that I've always heard from our clients or, you know, be it automotive, non-automotive is, well, what is content?
Right.
You know, what does that mean?
Right.
They don't know what it is, or they're thinking, maybe it's overthinking, where they think they have to be so special versus here's the pizza that we ordered from a restaurant next to us and we're going to thank you for them. And we tag them, and so they tag up. You know, it's sometimes we overthink it. How do you have that conversation, or what would you recommend to the audience who's sitting there going, I don't even know what content, what would I shoot? What would you think?
I completely agree. People are very intimidated by content because they hear content. They're like, lights, camera, action. Like, I do not have time for that. I go, you have an iPhone.
Right.
Whip out the iPhone. Like, that's all it takes. So people who are either intimidated by content or they're like, I don't even know where to get started. With our clients, what I found is that they'll have people at their dealership already creating content. Like, I've found people when I was talking to them about TikTok advertising being like, well, I don't have time to create these videos. And then I find 3 of their salespeople have their own personal accounts where they're creating all of this content for the dealership and they didn't even know about it. Or just people who are working day to day, like younger people push out content all day on their personal channels, photos, videos, like a quick story. Like, I'm always posting on my socials. That's content. Like, that's branding myself and my personal Sarah Ciociola brand. That's all it is. It's just being in front of people in a fluid way in their For You pages. That's all it takes.
See, and I like that because I agree. I mean, the cameras that we're using here in the studio, the iPhone is just as capable and in some cases better. And you're used to it. And I like that point. So anyone who's a business owner who's listening, I hope you heard what Sarah said, because there's probably someone on your staff that is already doing it and would love to help you and have better ideas than you would, or they're already creating things that, and so instead of saying, well, I have to go find and hire a content creator, you already have people. The other thing that I've shared with clients to say, just go to your different areas of whatever your business is. So in the case of automotive, go talk to your sales team, go talk to your service advisors, go talk to your people who are handling the phones and say, what are the top 10 questions you get about X? What are the top 10 questions in service that you get? And great, there's 10 videos where you can go ask somebody that question and they'll probably answer it, and boom, there it is. And I feel for most businesses, helpful content, as you said earlier, educational content, explaining how you do business, a little behind the scenes. I think that breaks down walls and actually will attract people to you more than no one's going to watch this. Actually, a lot of people will, because anytime I have a problem and I can't figure out something, I type in, how do you do this? And here's videos. I'm like, great, let's go listen.
Yeah. And so my sister is 19 and she works at an ice cream place, Hoffman's Ice Cream. And what the Hoffman's owners do and her managers do is they're like, okay, every time you have a shift, just shoot content. Like, if you're posting something on Instagram, send it to me too. If you can make TikToks, like if nobody's in there and you guys want to shoot a quick TikTok, and like she's 19, it takes no time for her to make a TikTok and it'll get thousands and thousands of views. Like, that's second nature to people that age. So also leveraging your team, kind of like you said, like if you're intimidated by content and you don't understand social media, who on your team can do it? Because it's a very fluid thing for a lot of younger people.
And I think this, taking us on a little side area here, is that idea of, interview your staff.
Yeah.
Same thing. My son is 19 and how they consume content is completely different. I've asked them, I've sat down with him and I've sat down with his friends and I said, well, okay, what apps do you have? Or how do you use this? Right? Like Snapchat for them is a communication platform, but they don't post anything on it.
Yes.
Instagram or TikTok is just consuming content. YouTube is like their TV. They spend more time on YouTube, but Twitter, not much, a little bit. Like they go in cycles where, Twitter's now the cool thing to be on for a little bit. Facebook, we're back on it, now we're off. Where before it was, that's where the grandparents are. So I think if you ask them and then start inquiring about, well, what would you want to see? What questions would you want answered about our business? I think that's a great place to start, because you're actually doing a focus group with people who are in your business versus trying to explain the business to you. So I really like that idea. So tactical, how often? So now the next person is going to say, okay, I have this content. Where should I be? So I'll pose this question and you can use automotive or non-automotive in your mind. Again, intimidation. There's so many places, so many platforms. So if you were going to say, okay, let's pick one or two, which would be the ones you would be posting on? And does it matter by industry or business? What are your thoughts?
I think it matters by who your consumer is, like exactly to your point. Like if you're an e-commerce brand or you're like a clothing brand for younger people, then I'm going to be on Instagram and TikTok.
Right.
If I have like an automotive dealer, like you're essentially targeting 18 to 65 plus, you're targeting everybody that can drive.
Right.
So in that case, I would probably focus a little bit more on the Meta platform, so Facebook and Instagram, but emphasizing not just, if you don't want to be on TikTok, fine, don't be on TikTok, but at least understand the value of short form video content and understand that that's what people want to consume. And it doesn't matter if they're younger or if they're older. People are now being vetted to want to only consume short form video content.
So put that short form video on Instagram Reels
Shorts,
or YouTube Shorts or on Facebook Reels just to get that out there where and maybe master one or two platforms before you try to do everything.
Yeah. And understanding that you can slice and dice one piece of content to make it work for every platform that you're on. You don't have to rewrite the script for Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, YouTube. Like you can really slice and dice one good piece of content to make it work for every single platform.
Next, how often?
It depends on the platform. Okay. So Instagram, every day. Every day you're posting a story. You don't post on your feed every day, but on your stories, you post as many times as you want during the day. Like I have brands that post 5, 6, 7 times a day. Personally, I even post 3 or 4 or 5 times a day. Facebook, I would post at least once a day. TikTok, I would probably make at least 3 or 4 videos a week. And again, just like on your iPhone, what's trending, what sounds are trending, like it could be educational, it could be this, it could be that. X, I'm not honestly too familiar with. I don't go on X at all.
I know I can't call it X. My brain just will not let me call it X.
But that's very much, people go there for information. Like they're not going there to be necessarily entertained.
No, I agree with you. I use X for news and because it's faster. But now it's getting clogged up with just these, people just pushing videos of like almost like they're just what we were talking about earlier. They're taking things that are either on TikTok and reposting them, and it gets a little confusing of why am I seeing this here versus over there, and I think that's again important to make sure you're posting the right message on the right platform where X is completely different. I don't think X works well, at least in my opinion, for some of our automotive clients because I think it's a little higher up. People are going there to learn about news in automotive, not necessarily what's the dealer selling that car things for. Right. Where maybe if I'm on Facebook and I see something and it brings me over, or I see a great video, or I see someone talking about something, and that'll lead me closer, where I think that's a higher up where maybe automotive news is talking about something or New York Times is talking about something versus lower. And I don't even think anybody's, at least for me, that's not a jumping off point for me to go somewhere to buy something.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
One of our previous clients, Mohawk Chevy, when I did with Nathaniel Grecklick, I did a TikTok presentation at the Modern Retailing Conference. And we were talking because he's great on TikTok. Like he really posts a lot of stuff on social in general. And I said, how do you keep up with all this organic content? And he said, I made it super easy for myself. Mondays, I do finance. Tuesdays, I do service. Right. Wednesday, I do new, used, so on. So every day I know I'm getting this content. I don't have to post it that day or that week, but I have it in this, this
library.
This library of content where I can schedule it out as needed. There's some content I shoot in November that I don't post until January. I just take it out and use it as I need it, and I schedule it all out in advance. So for people who are listening that are like, well, I can't post once a day, like that girl's nuts. You can schedule all of this out. You can have a content creator or a social media person that takes the first few days of the month and schedules out 30 days worth of content. And then if anything pops up in between that, it's just a sporadic post as needed.
So it's like you're creating a baseline of content that will go out, which then frees you up to be open to what's going on today, which then might be a story or an additional post with what's going on, but you're goes back to the branding evergreen, we've called it, is that if I focus on this, and I like that idea of that schedule where this day I do this, it takes that feeling of being overwhelmed of what am I going to do? I have to do everything versus, you know, what if you only had to focus on this? And we did an episode on that where I talked about the concept of vertical thinking, because when you pull that away from people and they're like, I'm so overwhelmed, I say, okay, what if you only had to do content about the service drive in an automotive, or this piece of your business? All of a sudden people go, oh, I know exactly how to do that. I do ding, 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 ding. I was like, now do that for every one of those, and then just schedule it and say, today I'm focusing on, today is XYZ department, and where am I at? I'm there, and off you go. And it takes that burden off, and then they can be fully focused on that, because they know tomorrow I don't have to worry about that today, because that's tomorrow.
Yeah.
Right. That makes sense. So as we're now hearing this whole, it seems like every year it's the new buzzword. Like what are we talking about now? And so AI is the new buzzword, and there's products out there that you and I have seen that claim to be AI. They're not really AI, or they're more of a if this then that type of a, you know, stream of answering questions. And we're moving towards that in terms of communication. But also there's this whole idea now of AI where ChatGPT is going to write everything. And now that we see the new versions of, I can't even keep up with all the names, the ones that are creating videos, the ones that are creating, you know, just building things for you. How do you see it? What are the pros? What are the cons? Like where do you see it could go completely wrong from a business standpoint or a marketing standpoint? And how do we use it? How do you think it should be used to be its most effective, or be as effective as it was supposed to be?
Yeah. So I think what people misunderstand about AI is never going to know your people, your processes, or your structure better than your people are.
Right.
Right. They're never going to understand your business the way that you do. It's still a very cookie cutter thing. So I think the pros of it is allowing you to use it in a way that will make your life easier so you can do more of what you do. Right. So instead of having to sit there and think about a million different ad copies or different hashtags, or even creating a content plan. I mean, you can put into ChatGPT, like, create me a content plan about my pizza place for the next 30 days, and they'll give you 30 different ideas of content that you can push out. Great. Now I didn't have to spend an hour creating that and thinking about it. I can just go do it, and I can spend more time shooting that content. AI is not shooting the content for you. So things like that, I think, is a big pro. Cons of people using AI, I think, is when people are going to use AI very literally. So you see, like, I talk to my teacher friends all the time where students will just put into ChatGPT like the prompt of whatever it is, and they just copy and paste it. Like, they don't even take the time to make it their own voice.
Right.
If businesses start to do that, like, people are going to notice that right away. Like, obviously somebody just threw that into ChatGPT and threw it on an ad copy or a billboard or a flyer or whatever it is. So if you're taking AI literally, then no, it's not going to work effectively for your business. If you are using AI in a way that is taking away kind of those tasks that you don't really have to do, like AI can do them for you, and you can focus on what only a person can do, that's how you're going to leverage AI effectively. What we are doing at PCG from a paid media standpoint, specifically on social medias, Meta now you can write your ad copy like in the ad portion of an ad. And then Meta gives you 5 different AI versions of that ad copy, and you can test them all within a campaign. So you can click on whichever ones you like. You can still manipulate them if you want, but then that'll allow AI to use its algorithm more effectively on the Meta platform to see what's resonating more, because you'll be amazed that if I write something and then AI writes it just a little bit differently, how much more traffic we can get, how much more people it'll reach, just because it's using it in a different way.
Right.
And then that also allows your team to say, okay, now I know what's more impactful. Now I can start writing ad copy like this, feeding it back to the AI to make it even more impactful.
Right.
So you're not letting AI take your job. You're just letting it make you do your job better.
So I like that. I personally use it, as you said, I use it as a brainstorm.
Yes.
Like ChatGPT is a brainstorm. So if I'm speaking, and I'll say, here's sort of what I want to speak about. Give me 5 titles for this workshop. And they'll give it, and I'll sit there and then I edit. I don't like that. That doesn't sound like me. Or even if I write something, I'll say, please edit this. And I can even say in my voice, I've written enough where and sometimes I'll look at it and I'll go, that doesn't sound like me, or I don't like that word. But I like how you're pushing to say it's your co-pilot.
Yeah.
Right. So it's helping me edit, but I have to edit the edits.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that also learning then, because now my starting point is better, and then AI is going to do that. I think I heard someone speak at recently at our conference about the dangers of AI. Not danger. They're not taking over the world yet. We know how that story ends with Terminator. But he was saying if everybody just uses ChatGPT and we start pushing all of that in, everybody starts looking the same.
Yeah.
But then what happens is that eventually it doesn't learn anything else, because all we're doing is feeding it itself, so to speak. You know, if we're just copying what it was and putting it out there, then eventually out on the web, ChatGPT is going to be reading ChatGPT's information, and it may not get better. Mm-hmm. Where now we just have everybody sounds the same, everyone looks the same, and I've been able to spot when people are writing, because it'll always say in conclusion.
Right.
That one you're going,
people don't really talk like that.
No, you're like, and so it is a danger, because people with bad intentions can create things that aren't real. But more from a tactical standpoint, I agree with you. I think from a marketing standpoint, from a creative standpoint, having someone brainstorm where you can plug something in, it just instantly gives you things. But again, you have to edit it and then test it. And was that better? Was that worse? Does this sound like me? Because ChatGPT and some of these AIs will take your company away from, if you let it. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden you're down the road and you're going, well, that's not really my message. That's not who we are. Well, that's because you let the robots, so to speak, create your brand and push you down, and you didn't rail it or pull it back in. Mm-hmm. Okay, a couple other questions, because I want to get to you.
Okay.
So let's talk about you. You've been with us for, let's see, now it's going to be 6 years. Right. So 6 years, and your role has evolved. Mm-hmm. And you've moved into a leadership position. So talk to me about your journey within the company, but also as yourself, coming from someone who started in the chair and now you're leading a team, because we do like talking about that here. So how has that journey been? What how do you look at leadership? What have you learned? What mistakes have you made? Things along those lines.
Yeah, sure. So I started at PCG in September of 2018 as a junior specialist. So I went to school for marketing. I just got out of college, and my parents were like, if you do not use this marketing degree, I'm going to kill you. So I interviewed at PCG. There was a junior social media specialist position open. And at the time, Denise was the social media manager. And I didn't know, with marketing, you go to school for marketing, you can do anything in the world. You can go any direction. So I interviewed with Denise, and at the time, I still didn't know if I liked automotive. I didn't know anything about automotive, you know? But I just remember thinking, like, if I could have half the career that this woman has, then like I'll be a very happy person. So I ended up getting the position, worked my way to becoming a senior social media specialist, which just means taking on a bit more responsibility, like outside of your client load and being a leader within your social media team. Mm-hmm. And then about 3 years ago, I kind of identified that there was a big disconnect between the social team and the paid search team.
Right.
Because we sell our clients on an interconnected marketing experience. And I wanted to make sure that was still being consistent. So executive leadership gave me that opportunity to lead both of those teams and connect them and bring them together and create more interconnected strategies. And so I have been the paid media director for 3 years now. And I would say my favorite part of being a leader is doing what you and Brian and Denise have done for me since I started, which is pushing my specialists on my team outside of their comfort zones a little bit to grow themselves in their career.
Right.
And what Denise has always emphasized for me, which I now always emphasize for my team, is yes, we want you to grow, to emphasize and grow PCG, but you need to always be focused on building your personal brand and have your own career goals in mind, whether it's with PCG or it's somewhere else. And we're still going to allow you and help you to grow and give you the resources to grow yourself. So I always emphasize that with my team as well. And I would say that's my favorite part of my job.
Well, that's very nice of you to say that, but we love what you do and the value you bring, and I've seen the growth. So let's drill in a little more here, because you've accomplished a couple goals. I remember a few years ago, because we host conferences. For those of you who don't know, we have a few conferences that we host. And you've seen my brother and I, and even Denise, was speaking internationally around different places. And you came to us and said, I would like to speak. You know, I want to be able to speak. What do I have to do? And so talk about that journey, because I'm sure it sounds good to say, I want to be up on that stage.
Yeah.
But it also is, oh my God, I'm going to be up on that stage.
Yeah, right.
What do I sound like? How do I do that? So again, there is that. And I want you to touch on this imposter syndrome, because you and I were talking earlier, we all go through it. Is, do I really deserve to be up there? Is someone going to really listen? Am I smart enough? Am I educated enough? Am I good enough? So talk about that, because I think where you've gone, and I really want you to tell that story to get to the other side of where you are now. I think there's people who will benefit greatly from your story on that.
Yeah. So when I first put my hat in the ring to be like, I really want to speak, it was 2020. So my first public speaking opportunity that I got, it became COVID and everything went remote. So the first few public speaking opportunities I had were all over the computer. So it really
you had that little barrier.
I kind of got my feet wet a little bit. Like I wasn't really thrown into the deep end. I really got to do it remotely and like over Zoom and, you know, whatever else. So that really helped me. And then, of course, you know, in Brian Pasch style, my very first in-person was a 4-hour training at DMSC.
Right.
So that was crazy to me, that I was like, okay, I've never done it in person. Now I'm going to do a 4-hour certification course. And ever since then, I've just either been asked to speak or I've applied to speak. But yeah, with the imposter syndrome, I think the biggest thing for me is that when I get on stage or when I'm getting on stage, I just always remind myself, like, people are in this room because they want to hear what you have to say.
Yes.
Like you can get in your head really quickly of, well, I don't really know it. I don't really know it. You know more than 90% of the people in this room. And even when I go into workshops and I have, you know, smaller presentations and more workshop settings, the first thing I say is like, I am not the smartest person in this room. So if anybody knows something that I don't or that can contribute to this conversation, please raise your hand.
Right.
Because I want to learn just as much as you do. And that takes the pressure off you right away. It takes the pressure off you feeling like, okay, I have to know it all. I have to be the only source of education in this room. And it allows people to collaborate. And that's how I've also really networked myself. I've met so many great people in these workshop settings from setting the stage in that way to they feel more comfortable to talk to you during the workshop, after the workshop.
Right.
You know, whether you're on a stage and they're talking to you after, in the middle of it all, encouraging people to ask questions. And then the second piece of that is when I do go and speak, I make sure I go and listen to other speakers as much as I can.
Right.
And I really analyze, how are they speaking? How are they engaging with the room? What does their presentation look like? What's their speaking style? And I take little tidbits of what I know will work for me from all these other speakers, and I create my own style. And I will always do that for the rest of my career, because you're always learning and you're always growing. Nobody's the most professional speaker ever. You always have room to grow. And that has really helped me grow, you know, my speaking abilities.
And I think you made some really good points that I just want to pull out so people don't miss them. One is the idea of the thought of they're here to learn something, and there's a reason I'm on stage. But if that focus is, how do I look? I hope they like me, then you're not focused on them. And that was one of the best pieces of advice I got early on. I mean, I was an actor for a long time, but transitioning to that speaking was, it's not about you. You know, what are you there to teach the audience? Have a conversation. And I like the way, and I think it's a great point for people to take in and understand, is when you go into a setting and you're humble enough to say, hey, what do you want to learn? You know, I usually go into any of the workshops or things and I ask people, why did you come here? at our conference, at the Digital Marketing Strategies conference or Modern Retailing conference, there's probably 4 other workshops. Or if you're speaking at a large event, there might be 10 other or 15 others. So I always preface it by saying, what are you here to learn? What do you want to get out of this? Because if you're good and your topic, you can pivot and you can tailor it so that they get the value that they're looking for versus, nope, I'm going to tell you what I want to tell you. And we've all sat through those. The other thing that I really like is constantly watching other people. I like doing that as well. Is when I'm at a conference, especially before I speak, meaning if I'm on the second day, I want to see what people are talking about in the first day, because other speakers appreciate when you reference what they talked about. And all of a sudden you say, well, as Sarah said yesterday, what I thought was really that all of a sudden shows that you're trying to make the event successful. And more importantly, that's where that networking comes. Oh, I heard you mention me. Thank you very much. And you start to bond that way. I think that's really great. And I think one of the other things I'm very proud of you of is your involvement with women in automotive. We had Gary, May, and Veronica on a couple episodes ago to talk about that. But for them to come and talk to you about being someone involved there to mentor some people, and now you're laughing, you're like 6 years in, now I get to be a mentor. But it is important because of the journey where you are and what you've achieved so far in your career. So talk to me about that one, the value of mentors and what it feels like to be seen now as a mentor to someone else who might be starting their career in marketing.
So one of the things that I attribute a lot of my success so far to is that I've always been surrounded with really great women in their careers. Like all of my bosses have always been women primarily. And especially once I started going to these events, women did that for me. Right. I now have good friends and mentors throughout the entire country in the automotive space that I can call at any time. I can text at any time, ask for advice, ask for feedback. And it's such a great community of women. And I wanted to be a part of that too. So now that I can do that for other women who are just entering the automotive space, which we all know can be intimidating, men, women, doesn't matter. Anything new is intimidating. Right. And being able to be like, I'm a hand, I'm a friendly face, I'm a shoulder to lean on, and I'm somebody to answer questions for you. But then I'm also somebody to introduce my network to you. Because the bigger your network is, whether that person's been there for a day or for 25 years, everybody has something to contribute to your bottom line success. Right. And that's something that's really important and special to me.
I think that's so important because I think people can be intimidated in terms of networking or approaching someone who they think is more experienced or that person was on stage. And the more that you make yourself available, I agree with you. I think moving through the world with a sense of service, serving others, be proud of what you are. Again, it is that fighting that imposter syndrome of, oh no, I'm not really, nobody wants false humility. Yeah. But you're good at what you do. And I'm speaking to you personally. You're good at what you do and you know what it is. And so the fact that you're allowing others and helping others just as other people have helped you, it just continues because then the people above you or let's say more experienced see that they want to be connected. So I think the more that it's a great networking tip to just look to see how you can help others or ask questions and don't be intimidated to ask questions. 99% of the people, when someone goes up and asks what, are willing to answer your question and help. Yeah. Don't think everybody's that one person who is the arrogant ass. Yeah. Oh, I can't talk to you. Right. That's one. Don't, as they say, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Most of the people want to help. They're actually surprised that you're asking them, and they're more than willing to help. And I've seen your journey, and I think where you're going. I've seen your leadership style grow. So as we sort of wrap up here, what's one of the biggest misunderstandings that you had to overcome in what it means to be a good leader for your team?
That's a good question. I think one of the biggest misunderstandings is the fact that when I first became the director and I first started leading teams, I felt very much like I said before, I had to know everything. I had to have an answer to everything. I had to be the smartest person on the team. I had to know how to do everything. I didn't understand when I first became a leader how to leverage my team. And I didn't understand how to be comfortable with the fact that your team is more than likely going to be smarter than you and better at you than some things. And what I've learned now through being a leader for, 3 years at the company is that you're part of that team. Like, yes, you're leading the team, but you're still part of that team, and understanding how to leverage everybody's strengths to make your team better. That's something I did not understand when I first started. And now, knowing that, I've been able to continue to build those teams and become a little bit more comfortable with the teams. Because at first I just thought if I didn't have an answer, I'd be very stressed, or if I didn't know how to do something, I'd get very choked up. And now I call my teams all day. I'm like, I know, this person's better at analytics than me. And I know this person knows the back end of Google Ads better than me. And I know, this person on the social team knows coding better than me. And that's great.
Right.
And taking those things and leveraging them and allowing them to grow in those directions that they're naturally good at that I'm not. And there's things that I'm really good at that they're not, but that's why we make a great team.
And I think that's such a great sort of point to wrap everything that we're talking about, because that is the hardest. It truly is. And I'm glad you mentioned it, because when you're the doer of that task, and now you have to be in a position, you have to let that go, and you have to allow those people, because your job or your duties in terms of making the team successful or change. Your job isn't to do that job anymore. Your job is to make sure they do that job. And you surround yourself with people that are really great. I text you or call you all the time. I was like, what is this? What's going on? What happened over here? Because people always say, oh, well, you run a great company. I said, I just surround myself with people smarter than me in the things that I either don't want to do, or that's just not my job.
Yep.
But they're relying on me to be really smart at certain things so that we can, because if everybody's doing that job, then if you're doing that job, why do I need that person? Right. So you have to move, and it's really tough to let that go.
Yes,
it really is. And I'm glad you touched on it. But once you get to the other side of it, you finally see that and you go, oh, now we can accelerate, versus I have to your point, always have to be the smartest one. Nope. That's why I hired you. Right? That's why you're running the team and not me. I have other things to do.
Right.
And that allows then the team to be completely successful. So this is a great conversation.
Yeah.
Having fun?
Yeah.
Oh, good. All right. So at the end of every show, we ask just random questions. So this is where we're going to put you on the spot.
Oh, boy.
So what is a book or a podcast or something that you're watching, reading, that's inspiring you right now that you would share?
What's a book? Well, I just finished reading Demon Copperfield, which I don't know if you've read that one. It was 600 pages, took me forever to get through it. But one thing that I took away from it, and it has nothing to do with marketing or business or anything, it's just a story. But one thing that I learned from reading that book is just to, again, surround yourself with people that are better than you. So you become better. It's exactly what we were just talking about.
Right.
This book, the main character was in a bad place, and he started to surround himself with people that he thought he could never be in the same room as. And all of a sudden, he really came out on top. And I think through the rest of my career and personally too, you want to always make sure you're not the smartest person in the room.
Well, that's what they always say. If you're the smartest person
in the room,
you're in the wrong room.
So if you're actually the person who's probably has the least experience in the room, you're in the right room, and you better stay in that room.
Right.
So I would say that.
Okay, great. What's the best piece of advice you've ever gotten?
Growth happens outside of your comfort zone. If you always stay in your comfort zone, you're never going to grow. So every time I'm given an opportunity that kind of gives me a gut punch, or I'm like, oh God, I can't do that, I'm like, yes, let me go do it. And every time I've done that, I've grown, and it's only, given me positive things in return. Yeah,
I think that's, again, a good point, because, if you don't feel that challenge, you're not stretching yourself. And when it gets to the point where you're like, this is difficult, it's like, okay, that the world's telling you this is your breakthrough point. And it was funny. I listened to somebody, I can't remember who it was. I think it was an Instagram person who does characters. And somebody was asking him, and he says, everybody runs away from fear. He goes, but if you run towards fear, fear's afraid of you.
Yeah.
fears are afraid of you coming at it, because then they go, oh, I don't have that power over you. So I like that. Okay. What's the worst piece of advice you ever got?
Oh gosh, the worst piece of advice?
Keep it clean. I mean, in business or in speaking, what's the worst piece of advice somebody ever gave you?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't know if I've ever gotten like a horrible, horrible piece of advice. What would be yours?
I would say being comfortable is okay.
Oh, okay.
You know, like don't worry, don't push so hard. Now, the worry part, that's okay. Don't overthink. But some people are like, oh no, once you hit a certain level, then you can coast. That was the one thing. When you get to a certain level, you'll coast, and you can. But then after a while, coasting is not fun.
Yeah.
Repetition is not fun. Now, there are some people that's okay. That's not me. And
yeah.
when I realized that, and they said, if you get to this level, you'll be good and you don't have to push anymore. After a while, I was like, this is boring as hell. This is not for me. Like, there is a gear in my head that goes, I want to do more. I have to try more. Even if it's I remember we both share working in restaurants. It was always, if it was too much of the same, I never understood that. I saw where, I worked in construction with my father. And I saw people who worked at a company for 50 years and they were great and they loved it and they supported their family. I just saw that as I'm going to jump off the bridge if I have to come in and do the same thing every single day, which is why I liked restaurants.
Yeah.
Because every day, even though there's some organization to it, every day is different. That to me was always, so just finding something and maintaining, that was the worst piece of advice that I ever got.
Yeah.
Where's a place that you've traveled? Where's a place you want to go that you haven't been to yet?
Oh, I'd love to go to Sicily in Italy. My mom's side is Sicilian, and I like always look at videos on TikTok and Instagram, and I really, really want it. It's somewhere that like I've always been drawn to, and I will get there.
Yeah. See the challenges, but yeah, my wife and I went to there on our honeymoon because part of our family is from Sicily. I didn't go there. Brian, of course, my brother, decided to, he's going to go knock on the door of somebody and say, because he's just nuts that way. So 2 more questions.
Okay.
What is a goal? Because you've been talking about all these challenges that you have. What's a goal that you're working on right now that a year from now, you're going to say, I'm glad I did that?
I really want to be a published author. So whether it's like a book or a white paper or just something that's a little bit more than like an article on LinkedIn or a case study, I really want to have something that I can tangibly hold in my hand and be like, I produced this. Like there's a cover on it.
Right.
I can give it out to people. Like
there's your little author picture in the back.
Yeah, exactly. There it is. Like that's something I've wanted to do for a long time. And I'm finally like really putting like the pen to paper and working with Denise on creating something really cool like that. So
Great.
I'm excited in a year from now to talk to you again with it sitting right here.
There you go. I love that. All right. Final question. And then we're going to wrap up. New Jersey person here. Is it pork roll or Taylor ham?
It's pork roll.
Okay. God. Like, you're allowed to stay. I was going to have to cut the whole thing and just dump it and be like, that's it. We're not talking to you anymore. I was like, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So for all you non-New Jersey people, you have no idea.
That was the most important question of the whole podcast.
That was the most important question of the whole podcast. So, all right. Hey, thanks so much for being here. This was a lot of fun. I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Yeah, I did. Thanks for having me.
A lot of great information. So, all right. So we're just going to wrap up. You know the drill. First off, I just want to thank the teams at PCG Digital and Black Swallowtail Studios for producing this. For all of you who are spending time with Sarah and me, we know that there's a lot of places, as Sarah said, to consume content. The fact that you spent some time with us today means the world. I hope it was helpful to you. Please make sure you subscribe, share this out. I know there's someone in your network that can benefit from what Sarah has just shared here. Make sure you're here next week. We got some great guests. I'm back in the studio. I'm very excited about doing this. And as I say at the end of every episode, you're in charge. So make sure you take these tactical tips, apply them to help you become the leader that we know that you can be. All right. See you next time.